Companion quests are an essential tool for building up a character in order to immerse us deeper into the experience and to make us develop some kind of attachment and appreciation for not only the character, but the world around them. While I was making my video on why I did not find Cartethya's de facto companion quest enjoyable, my mind inevitably went to the many members of the roster whose stories I did enjoy. Some of them quite a lot, while others not that much. So, I thought, why not get into that and break it all down? I'll go down the line following the order of release using the wiki as my general guideline, but let's establish a couple of things. First off, I will not limit myself to only quests that are explicitly called companion stories, for one simple reason. A couple of characters, just like the aforementioned Cartethya, are so tied into a story quest it effectively functions as a companion one. Those characters are of course Jinhsi, Shorekeeper, and Cartethya. Therefore, they will be part of the discussion. Second, I will not talk about Changli, since the quest he's related to was a one-off that disappears and I wasn't playing the game at the time. I could watch it on YouTube, but that's just not the same as experiencing the story myself. Therefore, I won't talk about him. Third, but really obvious, I don't have all of these characters, though that's beyond irrelevant since their gameplay or how they slot into the meta doesn't matter for my enjoyment of their story. I'll talk about voice acting, whether the character hits and what the devs were trying to do from my POV, and just general enjoyment. Fourth, I will assume you know what I'm talking about, so I'm not going to break anything down in excruciating detail. And finally, all of this is my opinion, no. I'm not even gonna say that because if you need someone to put up that guardrail in order for you to not get offended, you're the same kind of person that will look at a statement like, bears are dangerous and can kill you. And will go, excuse me, hashtag not all, that bear at the zoo didn't kill me. And if you're that kind of person, you don't deserve consideration. Cool? Cool. Let's get into it. So first up, we have everyone's favorite character, Lingyang. Absolutely meta, beloved by everyone, and will never see anything other than a smile of pure joy when people lose a 50-50 to him. This may come as a shock to some, but I liked it. It was perfectly fine and a pretty wholesome tale. Lingyang gets a lot of hate because he's, I guess, a twink furry? Kind of a weird statement considering A, he's a kid, and B, he's literally a wolf boy. Unless the people making this criticism don't watch anime at all, I find it pretty bizarre. He's a very jovial, positive kind of young lad just trying to make everyone's day shine brighter, and that came across very well in the story. His voice acting was pretty good in what they were going for. The way the story plays coy with who he really is, even though it's extremely obvious, is excessive to the point of being comical. He's the last of his beast folk kind, and he's trying to fit into human society. Pretty wholesome, even if the origin story about how definitely not he ripped out all his claws and fangs and contorted and broke his own skeleton to walk upright is pretty grim. And I'm really glad I saw a character with minimal animal features and I wasn't beaten over the head with racism narratives like we see in damn near every fantasy anime ever these days. So that's an automatic point. Yeah, I'd say it's a solid B-tier story. It wasn't anything mind-blowing, but it was enjoyable, and in my book they did what they set out to do. Moving on, we have Jiyan, one of 3 men acting as a pillar holding up this triangular house full of rovers' waifus. His story quest is actually pretty unassuming at first. Just a good old Golpuff race that turns into quite a bit of drama. Jiyan's troubled general and father to his men archetype gets one hell of a spotlight on it, and expands on just how tragic and oftentimes desperate the fight against the lament can get. It shows just how much he cares about his soldiers and how much they care about him. How all of that weighs heavy on his shoulders, but he must very much keep his chin up, because if he crumbles, what will happen to everyone under his command? Yeah, it's pretty good though, to be fair. It's nothing his character trailer didn't already show you, but that may be just because his trailer is one of the best. And the whole thing about him having participated in a race and won in the past is, again, just like with Lingyang, painfully obvious it's him, but they're again being shy about it. That's fine, I don't really tend to put too much scrutiny on these stories unless they really force my hand. As for his voice acting, for some reason he reminds me of Metal Gear Solid. I don't know, sounds like Snake or Miller. Maybe it's the raspiness in his voice. I will comment though that there was one thing I found weird. I play Male Rover, and there were a couple of scenes that were pretty sus. Let's just say I'm glad this isn't Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, because one wrong dialogue choice would have made me see things that would make me quit right then and there. Anyway, yeah, pretty solid. Another B tier, I would say. Above Lingyang, but still firmly in the B spot. Nothing crazy. Next up, we have the lovely, sexy, seductive, mysterious, very cool Yinlin. Right away, I'll say her VO delivers on all of those points. It's fantastic. And her story is actually pretty interesting because unlike many of the other companion quests, hers feels less like a side attraction with some mingling, but it feels like an actual story instead. Though that's probably a coincidence of her character. She's out on a hunt we stumble into, whereas with a lot of the other stories, we're waffling around and boom, there's some kind of drama. Simply put, the Yinlin story was already going on by the time we started the quest. She's in the middle of an investigation into some seriously shady business, using dead people's frequencies in order to animate dolls and effectively bring back the dead. That's a surprisingly compelling premise for a side story companion quest. Pretty fucked up if you think about it. And Yinlin herself is no slouch in the story. Impressively, she's the only major character in any Wuwa story that even hints at not being on your side. When she hits you with that double agent move, it was rather surprising. Sure, it was a ruse the entire time, but that's a medal on her lovely bosom. I feel like the G-force of that twist would break your neck if you had played everything in Wuwa so far except her quest. Sure, she's giving us the bedroom eyes at the end of the story, but throughout it, she's very much placing herself as our equal or even above us, which is extremely refreshing. She has bite and attitude. She's not just stumbling around on her heels because Rover gave her his iconic bunker buster thumbs up. She very much breaks the mold, has her own agenda, and is not afraid to use and abuse you for her ends, noble as they may be. Now that I think about it, that's what I expected out of Cantarella. You know, a femme fatale type of character? But we'll get to that later. I'm torn between A and S, honestly. On one hand, I really enjoyed Yinlin's story, but on the other, an S tier is a dime, and while she's a dime herself, I reserve a 10 out of 10 for something that really hit me in whatever way. And I can't really say that's the case for her quest. I'm gonna go ahead and pull a mustache man and create the SS, I mean the tier. That way I can distinguish the excellent from the transcendental. So it goes in S as an easy 9. Carrying on, we must break away from the mold of companion quests and talk about Mount Firmament, aka Jinhsi's story. As with all main story quests, our rover takes a much more significant center stage, but I will refrain from talking too much about him, since in companion quests, Rover acts as more of a yin to the yang of our friendos, whereas in the main story, he's obviously much more relevant. Though I will say characterization of these people can suffer to varying degrees because we're dealing with the protagonist and the main plot. It will fall into the same box consistently, so do keep that in mind. So, everyone's beloved nuke on the field, Jinhsi. She's not my favorite character archetype because her main trait in the story ends up being perseverance, a word that anime loves to no end. That being said, her perseverance works quite well for one simple reason, her motivation. She's there to sacrifice anything she has in order to protect her people, the people who she leads. She was entrusted with being the magistrate of Jinzhou and very much holds the mandate of "for my people" firmly in her heart. So while perseverance is a cheat code anime uses left and right to fix anything and everything, it really didn't do any damage here. I wasn't hopelessly rolling my eyes because Jinhsi's motivations weren't just doing the right thing, or staying true to herself, or any other vague-ass cliche writers pull out of their ass when they have nothing compelling to deliver. Her voice acting, meanwhile, is fine. It's nothing to write home about, but it's by no means offensive. This is gonna be a B for me. Like I said, it being in the main story can be good or bad. On one hand, the stakes are greater, but on the other, our beloved companion has Rover breathing down her neck, antsy to do some protagonist things. Jinhsi isn't that amazing of a character, but Rover also doesn't absolutely steal the show, which does let her shine. So yeah, top of B so far. And of course, since we talked about Jinhsi, let's talk about Changli, the second seductive babe on the roster. Again, let's get the VA out of the way just like Yinlin. She's fantastic, though not quite as good in my book. Honestly, I don't have that much to say about her quest. We learn about her childhood and how quite stereotypically, if you're blessed with fire superpowers, it's not a fun time. Just like how she used to burn everyone she touched back when she couldn't control her power, that same power burns away at her longevity the more she uses it. Fire, out of all the other classical elements, tends to be the most often portrayed in such a frankly cliche way. The most interesting part about the story is that she's the first character of the roster whose life was heavily influenced by Rover's past actions throughout time. Rover, after all, had a major influence on Changli's mentor, who taught her everything she knows. In a way, Rover is her mentor by proxy. So that was really cool. But yeah, other than the bombastic finale where she incinerates a sonorosphere from the inside out, it's a rather subdued tale, much like Changli herself. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go B yet again, right below Jinhsi. Solid, but again, nothing too out of the ordinary. Moving on to our resident artist, we have Zhezhe. I'm gonna say right away, I did not like this story quest, and I did not like Zhezhe for most of it. Her VA couldn't save it because, well, she's playing the annoying ass insecure shy girl trope, and, well, she did her job. A Law and Order episode in fantasy China. A bit different from everything else for sure, but it did not compel me. I did not like it simply because I hate this character archetype. The insecure shy girl that unswallows her tongue in the grand finale and finally shows she's not just a dork in glasses. I can't stand it. Tragic because I love women in glasses. The finale had its coolness and, wait, what's that? Zhezhe turned into an actual character rather than the TV tropes entry at the end of the story? Probably the only thing that saved it from being E-tier. Since, you know, that sliver of dialogue at the end of the story where there's some actual banter, some actual humanity, and not a robot following the I'm a shy, insecure girl protocol. That was good. Shame it came at the end. And don't tell me that's my reward, because I had to slog through a story interacting with a character archetype I hate. So yeah, easy D tier. Now let's slide into the DMs of a piece of software real quick and talk about Shorekeeper. You know, it's kind of funny for a computer. Her VO has a lot of humanity, which is a big part of her character arc, if not the main one. But it strikes a delicate balance where you can indeed say that it works, because she's never going to freak out and scream, or display a lot of emotion in general, but it's still very much there. Her character arc is about going beyond protocols and the ones and zeros, so her emotions is like she's trying to pull them out of a place she herself doesn't know what it is or where it is, so they hit a wall and you can hear the muffled screams, but ever so slightly. This all keeping in mind of who she is an immense compliment on my part. Honestly, with every scene involving Shorekeeper, it only gets better and better as we see more and more of her humanity coming to light, her devotion to the Black Shores and especially Rover. Though I can't get too excited and declare this as the best companion quest in Wuwa. It's a main quest, so there's going to be a lot of heavy lifting, especially by Rover since he matches Shorekeeper's devotion with his determination. But that, honestly, because he matched her so well, only comes out as a positive, unlike some other characters. Goddamn though, no matter how I twist this in my head, I cannot give it less than S. S tier. Say, are you feeling like you may need a plushie? No problemo, because now we're going to talk about Encore. Oh, Encore. By far the most precious and adorable character in Wuthering Waves by a country mile. And guess what? That's because of her companion story, because it's fucking fantastic. Now, I will say Encore's turning fantasy plushie kingdoms into reality can be a bit much, and the beginning of the story very much starts that way. But it takes no time to get going. They introduce Ying, a child like any other in this shitty world who just wishes to see her mom again, and she serves as a vector for us eventually finding out about Encore's own mother. As a grown-ass man, I can take pride in the fact that I don't shed tears, but when it happens, whatever is the cause should be proud, because this story did make me tear up. It was fantastic, and even the plushie stories we started with began to grow on me despite me not being their biggest fan at first. The most critical thing I can say is that the VA does her job perfectly fine, though it can hit levels that are quite a bit more mature than whatever age Encore is supposed to be. I believe this story is a fan favorite, and spoiler, it's my favorite of them all. SS tier. Easy. SS tier. This here is a dime because Encore has the most endearing daughter energy. Just want to fucking protect her from the godforsaken world of Solaris. Alright, put your socks down, no point in putting them back on after Encore, cause we're gonna talk about Camellya. Now, Camellya is an interesting piece of fruit. She doesn't operate on black and white morality, never mind the dull grays. She's through and through blue and orange, with a good scent of yandere. She's not all there in the noggin. I like myself a nice yandere, but the problem with that character archetype is they're basically obligated to steal the show with their batshit insane demonstration of quote-unquote love. Think of Yuno from Future Diary, or S-Death from Akame ga Kill. These chicks are pretty cuckoo for the protagonist, and they tend to steal every scene they're in. Camellya isn't quite like that. You know, she didn't try to disembowel Shorekeeper, so that disqualifies her from full-fledged yandere status. She's more of a hyper-dangerous, playful trickster with a massive crush on Rover and one hell of a bloodtooth. You know, cause she sure loves herself a fight. Her voice acting in normal conversations is fine, and honestly nothing special. But then Camellya hits some of those notes where she's going a little crazy, and it's elevated so far beyond the clouds, it's quite something. One may say Camellya is a bit lacking in firepower, if you know what I mean. Well, her firepower comes from the sheer amount of innuendo you're gonna get beaten over the head with, which is fun in its own way. Feels like her entire motif is one big sex joke. But that's all surface level, because her quest goes deep. Not only do we meet a couple other iterations of Camellya and find out how no matter what happens, or how she turns out, every road will always lead her to Rover in one way or another. This quest elevates her from a yandere light waifu with a bloodtooth and a penchant for innuendo into a very compelling character. And frankly, I don't think any other companion story elevates its respective character nearly as much as this one does Camellya. Learning about a character is one thing, but elevating is another thing entirely. This is all not to mention the fact that the Black Shores in general has the best music, and it worked extremely well for Camellya's story. So yeah, I think she joins Encore in SS. For different reasons, sure, but it's definitely worthy of the placement. It's just way too good. And finally, we've arrived at Rinascita, so let's talk about 2.0, where we meet the lovely and refined Carlotta. She is already very heavily featured in the main story, but she has her own quest to boot. It's pretty good, although it feels a bit too lengthy at times because it can get pretty slow. A mafia story of internal conflict with a crisp sonorosphere at the end to wrap it all up. I quite enjoyed it, though I think the whole problem solver, one-woman cleanup crew role she plays in the Montellis doesn't get done too much justice. Other than her combat prowess, that entire aspect of her character doesn't get a whole lot of attention, whether in the main story or her story quest. In fact, Blue Carlotta, who by the way looks surprisingly nice considering all they did was just play with some colors, almost feels like at least part of that character should have been in Carlotta, but it's played off as something she wants to get rid of within herself. So while this story is quite enjoyable and has a lot of quality dramatic reveals, to the player anyway, it stumbled when it could have galloped. Carlotta is portrayed as regal, refined, and downright classy, but that darker aspect of her role in the family doesn't get the attention it should have. Instead, the story focuses on her desire for acceptance, since she's an outsider. But it's very well executed, which is while it's a bad subversion of expectation when it comes to character, I can close one eye and let it slide. I mean, do I even need to mention her voice actress? Yeah, she's bloody fantastic. She's been my main for most of my playtime, and I can't say I'm anywhere near getting tired of her one-liners, though the same can be said for every other character I play. A tier. Could have been excellent, but the characterization falls a bit short. Are you feeling festive? Because we're going to the circus now, and we're gonna chat a little about Rochia and her quest. I'm gonna be really honest here, it's nothing special. Rochia is really cute actually, and I like her character well enough, as well as her Pokemon sidekick, Pero. But the Troop of Fools in general feels like the B cast. They're really solid supporting characters, but they don't break the mold or pop as much as they maybe should. Rochia's backstory isn't too emphasized or shown. Basically see her on the verge of getting added to the Lament's KD ratio. Pero saves her, they team up, and here we are. Not much to it. I can't say anything is really poorly done, but they didn't do much in the first place. It has a cool moment or two, but ultimately there's not much to say. This story pales in comparison to most of everything else we've already gotten. As for her VA, it suffers from a similar problem to Encore, that she sounds quite a bit older than she's supposed to be. But with Encore, the delivery was childish and so was the writing, which compensated for the sometimes mature voice of the VA. With Rochia, however, there is none of that, so she talks like Yang while looking the way she does. So yeah, unfortunately, she's gonna have to go into C tier. Now, of course, we need to talk about everyone's favorite captain, Barantu! Yeah, his quest suffers from the exact same problems as Rochia. It's a rather run-of-the-mill pirate-style story, and we learn about how Brant turned into a mythical legend, but it's also downplayed and muted. I feel like they should have taken a page out of the Resonator showcase for the story, but they didn't. It was fine, and Brant is a very fun character who loves to be in the spotlight, and his voice acting is very lively. It's very enjoyable. But as a whole, there's very little to the story to flesh out Brant as a character. This harms him more than it harms his second-in-command Rochia because of their extremely contrasting personalities. I didn't expect much from Rochia, so I can't say I was disappointed. But I did expect more from Brant. Unfortunately, I came out of it disappointed, so he's gonna join Rochia in C tier. Oh boy, 2 more characters to talk about. I am not going to talk too much about Cartethya I since I already made an entire video on her and why I did not like her. In a stark contrast to every other character as well as their portrayal, Kuro dropped the ball. Yes, even compared to Zhezhe, because I have a problem with the premise of her character in the first place. They forego any compelling characterization by beating you over the head with how cute she is no matter what she does. Considering her arc is about finding her true nature, nothing ever changes. Her finding out she's supposed to be the big bad's #1 gal has absolutely zero impact. Her one moment of internal turmoil is glorified melodrama farming by the writers, and even that gets brushed aside. Her voice acting is fine, and honestly it could be amazing, but there's no character worth elevating here, so it wouldn't make her any better. E tier. Only reason she's not F tier is because much like Zhezhe, there's actually a conversation that's not retarded cuteness bait. If you want more details, check out my video on her. And we've reached the end, and at the end awaits Cantarella. Much like the other babes, let me right away say that her voice acting is phenomenal. Still below Yinlin, but fantastic all the same. And now I will elaborate on what I said before. Cantarella's entire character is very much not what I expected. All the teasers, whether in the trailers or the drip marketing or the showcase, paint a very different picture from what we ended up getting. All those massive femme fatale vibes I was getting out of all the material before her release are almost completely non-existent. A couple slivers at best, and we're left with what is, and I hate to say these words, big mommy energy. Cantarella is not the character I thought she was, and while this would be fine, in that the truth can be quite different from all the nasty rumors and deadly legends, they went so hard into that idea that it almost felt like I was lied to, and not by the people spreading those nasty rumors, but by Kuro themselves. Turns out she's one of the most heroic and nicest people in Wuthering Waves. By the end of her story quest, the only thing that remains of my initial impressions of her is that yeah, she's still flirty, playful, and seductive. All the nastiness is played as an echo of a darker past, but as if sacrificing her second awakening to help Imperator wasn't enough, turns out all these ghost girls are still alive because she protected them the entire time. Now that right there was Kuro lying to me as we hear their screams about how much it hurts, and I actually read things in this game for once about how these trials are this and that. Turns out they're all good. Yeah, they were trapped, but it was for their own good. All of that being said, while I do think Kuro again kind of fumbled the bag, same way as with Carlotta by downplaying the supposedly darker aspects of both characters, the execution of everything was still very solid. This is definitely a worse butchering of expectations than Carlotta though. I did enjoy the story very much, even despite all that, and the thing I could just flat out say I did not like was the reveal at the end with the girls, because that was just Kuro going back on their word. But because of how Cantarella felt retconned into the nicest gal ever, I will put her at the top of B, even though enjoyment-wise it would have been A tier below Carlotta. As I said, Yinlin was the style of character Cantarella should have been, at the very least partially. So yeah, B tier. But yeah, there's a nice spread of rankings, quite a few more highs than lows, though as you can see, Renacita's companion quests didn't quite hit nearly as hard as ones we've had earlier. I thought about talking about Phoebe due to her presence in both 2.0 and 2.1 with a fair degree of characterization, but after some further mulling over the issue, I decided against it. So yeah, there you have it. Cheers folks, have fun and good luck on weathering the waves.